this is why Europe needs us, which is in itself is a statement. So I would like to twist that statement, because is it true that Europe needs us? Is it true that Europe really needs public service television? Or is it just an old tradition that we have it? And I'm thinking that the Danish Broadcasting Corporation, which is the oldest network in Denmark, has a budget about 500 million euros a year. That is exactly the same amount that all public service stations in the States, in the USA, is getting from the state. So one little country with 5 million inhabitants actually spent just as much on their public service television as the United States of America, which is very interesting. So I have here on my right, your left, Dr. Roberto Suárez Candel, was it correctly pronounced? Who is working for a secret service, media intelligence service, sounds like James Bond or something, right? In the European Broadcasting Union. You will explain maybe to the audience later. I have another doctor here to my left, and I have a bad cold, but that's not your specialty, I think. Johan Linden from Sweden. You're a special consultant for the management of the Swedish television. And so maybe you give a small introduction to your job, to what you're doing in the European Broadcasting Union, and you do the same thing for Sweden. But make it short, because I think that people get tired with too many and long statements.
Okay, hello everybody. First of all, thank you to the organization of the conference for inviting me here. As our moderator said, I'm the manager of the Media Intelligence Service at the European Broadcasting Union. Basically, this is a new research unit that the EBU has created in order to gather data, to carry out analysis, and to provide our members and our permanent services departments in Geneva with all kind of intelligence. Basically, our goal is to do research in order to obtain solid and strong arguments to build a case for public service.
Johan?
I work as senior advisor to the management board at Swedish Television and work with strategic issues and reorganizations and things like that. And then I'm also Secretary General for CIRCOM regional.
Okay, so my first question to the two of you is, do we really need public service television? What I can see when I watch public service television is that it becomes more and more commercialized, that it's very hard to see the difference between public service stations, which are being financed by the money that we squeeze out of the taxpayers, and commercial television. Why don't we do in Europe what they're doing in the States? Give the public service station a small amount of money, a small budget, and then they will go and find sponsors for the rest. Why should we still keep on begging money or forcing people to pay for something that they can get free of charge elsewhere? Maybe you would like to start.
Okay, since we are in Galicia, I will answer to the style of how people are here, and I will ask you two questions. Do we need public health system? Do we need public education? Could be managed privately, of course. I think it's a question of political perspective, and it's a question of what do we want to do with our societies. And of course, any activity can be managed publicly or private. There are certain differences in how things are then done. And of course, it depends also what you aim. If you aim for economic profitability or if you aim for social and cultural profitability. And I think that there is a strong connection between the way of funding and the way of how an institution is organized and how an institution is being held accountable in front of society and the final product. So I think, yes, there is need for public service, and it's not a question of money and funding. It's a question of how you want to do things and what do you want to do.
I'll get back to you later, but I'd like to hear you first, actually.
Yes.
That's the only answer. Okay, so can you compare this to public health or public education? I don't think so. I mean, when you watch our televisions, the national networks, you have game shows, you have sport, you have all kinds of entertainment. You have, in our country, you have a lot of American series. And then you have some local national news. I'm not talking about, we'll go to that later, regional stations, because we have to deal with our regions, and it's a completely different situation, at least where I come from. Public health, yeah, because that's a very important thing, but and there's not a free alternative to it. But there are lots of free alternatives to public service television.
Yeah, but
so I think that's a very bad comparison. I'll just let, and then I'll get back to you.
Well, I think that you claim to sustain your position that you are not.
I'm just provoking you.
Yeah. Well,
okay.
I'm answering that you are not happy with what you are receiving. Then complain and go to the public service and say, I'm not happy for that, about what I get. I'm living in Switzerland. In Switzerland, health is managed totally private, in a private way. Switzerland has a very good health standards. I can tell you it's a nightmare when you arrive and you feel you are not a person, that you are like a car, you are like an object, because you have to sign all this. So I think, again, I would say maybe public service broadcasters and at EBU, we monitor what our members do, and we know that in some cases there is still a space to improve what we are delivering. But it's not only about the content, it's about how is it done and the values and the goals that are behind this, about universality, free access, media pluralism.
Okay, Johan.
Yeah, I think it's evident that we need public service because there's substantial enough research, as we both have been working with. We met actually 10 years ago as PhD students in Stockholm. And there's enough research to show a correlation between functional democracies and the existence of public service, mainly in Europe. And you cannot compare the PBS system in America with what we have in Europe. And I think that you cannot say that market can take care of everything. The market is not a natural law; it's a human invention, and it lacks values. And a market needs rules to act. And if it doesn't have rules, if it doesn't have values, it's a beast. And we can see that if media is ruled by the market structure, it becomes a monster. Take, for instance, the Murdoch Empire. What happened in Great Britain last year? Take Fox Television. What they actually are broadcasting it's dangerous for society. And as long as you're dealing with the mental health of your citizens and the construction of your society, it all depends on what kind of society do you want. And then I would say that public service is absolutely a necessity in Europe, when we have started the most political project and problematic project with the union, where you actually need to have this system of socially controlled, responsible journalism that is within the core of public service.
So what the Americans are doing, and they're doing some very fine programs in their system, and it's privately sponsored by people who want culture. You don't think that this could work in Europe? I think there's another problem, actually. In my view, in my opinion, the American PBS, public broadcasting stations, are much freer than our stations. Public service stations are more or less state-controlled in Europe. The politicians decide how much you should pay as a citizen to them. They control, they punish you if they don't like your coverage of the political life. The European Union is now interfering very much in our stations. We have all these public service contracts, I suppose, with all kinds of demands and so on. So the politicians are very much in love with public service stations, and I don't see that love shared by many other people in the different countries. That was another provocation, and I would like to hear your reaction to that.
we cannot obviate that this connection, as you said, exists, and it's a problem. But this doesn't invalidate the legitimacy of public service. What is true is, and that's what we support from the European Broadcasting Union, and we work hard to do that, we need to improve the standards of independence and autonomy of public service broadcasters. And it has to do a lot with, I think you have to switch off.
Yep.
And I think this has to do a lot with journalistic professionalism, and also has to do with self-criticism, because if professionals in public service broadcasters or public service broadcasters as institutions, they think, okay, I have legitimacy and I don't care anymore about what I do or how I do it, that's the problem. The thing is that we are there to serve the society, and we should question ourselves all the time, how are we doing that? Concerning funding, of course, we see across Europe very different levels of funding, and what is true is that when you depend on public budget, of course you are more sensitive to receive pressures from your politicians. That's why we should depend less on public budget.
Well, it's all about responsibility and accountability. I'm not saying that public service is the solution and the only way to get democracy. I would say that a media system that has public service and a market-driven media is a perfect system. The American media system is not a perfect system. If you look at the research done on how well informed the citizens are, I mean, 60% that watches some of the channels still believe that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. And it was a legitimate war, and everybody else knows it wasn't, for instance. And I'm pretty sure that we need to have responsible media players, and that's part of being attached to the way your nation or your society is structured. So for me, it's absolutely no problem that my government every 4th or 5th years is making a review and checks if and holds us accountable if we are doing our job towards society and citizens that are pretty well described. And I don't think that any of our journalists feel the pressure. I can say that our Director General sometimes can feel a pressure for in budget discussions, but in general the journalists don't.
But the politicians appoint our general managements in that way. I mean, if you take the case of France, which I know very well, when you have changes of regime government, then they change the heads of French television. Your general manager didn't fall down from heaven. She was appointed by a minister. And of course there's a lot of pressure on our stations from the political life. And I wonder whether that is worse than having political pressure from the commercial market. I don't think so, actually.
No, my Director General is not appointed by the government, but you're right. In general, in Europe, there are some and more managers in the top level are appointed by politicians. That is a problem. I'm not saying that it's not a problem. That is a problem. So I think that our system is not perfect, and we need. And I think that a media discussion within the European Union that actually considers public service as something valuable to society could make all our broadcasters much more independent. And that's something that CIRCOM is striving for.
I don't think that you're moving very much from the headline, "This is why Europe needs us." I still don't see, I still haven't seen or heard a reason for maintaining public service stations.
Okay, then I give you one. One of the biggest problem in the whole media system is that the commercial sector cannot find a market model for online activities. that's kind of stalling the whole process. The only one that actually are doing something that is working across Europe is public service broadcasters. Swedish television have 500 million startups of programs online, and is driving the market, the online market in Sweden. And this, you can see this all over Scandinavia, and you can also see it in Japan, for instance, because public service is already paid for. It's free. It's our duty to create and innovate also technology. And this is very evident if you look at the research and if you look at what's actually happening. So for the whole media industry, it's imperative that the public service is taking this opportunity and is doing it.
Yeah, and there is also, as I said before, certain values that commercial broadcasters are not pursuing, and they are right not to pursue them. Universality, free access, independence, journalistic quality. Their objective is to make money. That's legitimate. What about regional needs? What about minorities? What about languages, culture? They don't care about that legitimately, and we need public service for that. And the problem here maybe is that we are always talking about public service as a dependent variable from the market. And in terms of market, can the market do or not do? I think this is the wrong approach. The right approach for public service is, what do the citizens want? And the citizens have to decide, and if they don't want it, then they should mobilize, and they should tell the politicians, we don't want the public service. But at the moment we have this system, and people are supporting public service. The problem is that maybe sometimes public broadcasters, we don't communicate properly the value that we are giving the citizens. For example, the case of Spain, where public service is a topic, is a controversial topic. If we tell the Spanish people, listen, every citizen is paying 2.01 euros per month to receive all the public offer, TV, radio, online, per month, citizen. How much is a newspaper? How much going to the cinema cost? But the citizens don't get this message. Of course, the citizens are not thinking about public service every day in their lives. So we are not doing well enough in communicating that. Maybe we should do an experiment. It's very risky. Let's shut down all the public stations for a week. Let's see what happens. Are we brave enough to do that?
Well, I think that, to give a more abstract answer, I think that Europe is facing so difficult problems all across the continent, all across Europe. And in order to find the solutions and find the reasoning and avoid conflict, we need a platform for intellectual discussion, and we need what public service can deliver. I can't see many commercial channels delivering that kind of arena for public debate, and we need it to work across Europe. I'm more afraid, and I think that many people will if not discover, but will appreciate public service much more the coming years. We can see it in Scandinavia, for instance. I'm more afraid that public service institutions are too slow organisms, because we have a long history and we are very, very slow when we have to move fast. And the media market is now changing so rapidly. And we are not really there. We're too slow. We're not understanding that we have been taught, and we have been broadcasting to people for 50 years. And we're on top of everything. We have power because people are used to listening to us. And now the game has totally shifted. People don't want to be shouted out. They want to network, they want to communicate, they want to take part, they want their pictures to be shown. And we are too afraid to let them in, which is very strange, because we are supposed to be owned by them.
So actually people are doing their own public service networks. That's what's happening. I think there's another question, and that is the role of the European Union. I think they're getting deeper and deeper into our organizations with their demands, because fundamentally, the European Union is a liberal project. They don't want us to compete too strongly with with the private market. So all these regulations are actually about the public service stations not being too much like the other ones, which we are. When I watch your television station, sometimes I feel like I was in Britain or in the States, because you have the same American series that we have, the same British thrillers and so on.
But the good ones.
You talk about democratic discussions and so on. I really think that we're getting further and further away from that kind of television. The kind of public service stations that you're talking about doesn't exist anymore.
I think you're right, because I think that many managers, including myself at one point, looked too closely at our competitors, our commercial competitors, because they were actually better at one point than we were. They had higher ratings. I'm not saying that higher ratings is the only way to measure if you're doing something good, but they made better programs, and we looked a lot upon their schedules and how they did their program and the way they approached subjects. And I think that many of us did it too much, so we kind of copied too much, and we kind of took over the commercial logic of thinking. But I think in order to have a right to exist, we need to go back to the fundamentals, our position in society, why we are here and what we can do. And I think that and this is why I think that regional television is really, really important, because on a national level, I wouldn't say on the EBU level in general, but on a national level, including in my country, the competition is between the national public service channel and the commercial channels, often owned by American companies. They compete on equal terms. But on the regional level, we are closer to the citizens, and we actually have a much better position also in the new media market to communicate with the citizens.
We have a question down there, but maybe Roberto, while the microphone is walking through the... No, you have a comment? Okay, so we'll listen to our Dutch colleague. We can't hear you. We can see you, but we can't hear you.
Stand up and shout, to quote.
Yeah, it's working right now. I think it's an interesting point you raised, Johan. Looking at the systems, you always look at the national system and compare them to public and compare the commercial to each other. I've got a question for you. I know that EBU is working on the 2020 vision. Can you tell something already about it, what it's going to and what it's looking like, or what the thoughts are, and how regional and national are involved in that investigation or vision you are developing?
Yeah, the EBU has as a major project this year, this Vision 2020, and the main goal is to analyze how public service will be indispensable in 7 years. And what we are doing is that we are gathering our members in expert groups about content, about regulation, and about technology, trying to identify the current trends and how they are going to develop, and then to see how public broadcasters need to react to that. And what we see, just to make it short, there are several issues like economic crisis, funding on the one hand side, and on the other side, the need to develop new services, because if you don't develop and you don't follow the same path as the audience will forget about you. We also observe issues connected, as I said, with independency and autonomy, to be more professional. So the audience will appreciate our quality, will see us as a reference point. And then there is internal issues. Our organizations have to adapt to new structures. I know that there are many buzzwords and keywords, flexibility. I don't like them. But what is true is that we have to improve the way we work and to make better use of the resources and to be more transparent and more accountable to the society.
What would happen if one day it was forbidden for public service broadcasters to have entertainment, feature films, American series, and if we were told only to do news, political subjects, culture, and so on?
The world would end. No, I'm not.
You can
I'm
get
serious.
it. You can get it from the private providers. You don't need to have it from the
No,
public
but
service
I
broadcasters.
think that's one of the usual arguments for doing everything, and I think that we have a problem because most of the public service stations come from a monopoly situation where you had the total market, and therefore you strive to have the total market all the time, instead of kind of making an analysis that this is the market that we can have with our remit. But you strive for 100% all the time because once you had it. So I think you need to you need to understand that if you only had news and opera, that's the argument in Sweden, nobody would watch. So you need a context. But this is an old argument because I don't need a context at all because I watch everything on my Apple TV. I have everything on hard disk. I don't have a flow in my viewing. And in 5 years, the context is not there. It's the trust, it's the reliability that you have as in your network with your audience. They trust you and you're in the same network.
We have a question up there. Michael Lally from Ireland.
While the micro arrives there, I would say that if we think that public service is not about entertainment, I think we are wrong. And, for example, I can give you some numbers. In the last year, income from pay TV revenues has increased in the EBU area 14%. 14%. Why is that? Because crisis, staying at home, pay for TV is kind of cheaper than doing many other things. This means that premium content, like cinema, sports, obviously is going to be transferred to the pay offers. Yeah, of course that the Champions League is not essential for the citizens to live and to survive. But again, it's about having free access to relevant and premium content. That's also a public service function.
But I think
Chairman,
I don't think it's right to say that the public service values is located in different genres. I think that's stupid. Because look, for instance, at the Eurovision Song Contest. You could say that that is the biggest entertainment show in the world, and it has absolutely no value of that are public service. But what Swedish television now is doing is taking this huge thing to Malmö, a small town where CIRCOM hosted the conference last year, by the way, and because it has a huge impact for that town culturally, because now they have 2 weeks of culture festival around European Song Contest. And around the Song Contest in Sweden, we've had a display of a lot of different genres that would never appear in, for instance, the commercial musical programs. But we put values into a big entertainment show and made it to something else.
Okay, we have 2 minutes left, Michael.
I think we need to move on from the sterile argument of public service broadcasting equals boredom. The absence of public service broadcasting will disenfranchise minorities, will disenfranchise regions. Public service broadcasting is a key part of the democratic process. That's the first thing. Second thing is, let's be very careful and deal in facts. I worked in the States. I worked with PBS in New York. The situation is not as you're outlining it, Dan. It is top of the political agenda of the Tea Party and the Republicans to shred what's left of public service broadcasting right across coast to coast. That is the official policy. It also includes, and there are several examples over the last 2 years of direct political interference in the States with PBS. Radio is going to become a thing of the past. What it is at the moment, it has become the voice of the right. Final point, because we shouldn't allow sterility be the order of the day. I'd like to give an example, a personal example. Out of this example, for me, is enshrined the difference between public service broadcasting and commercial broadcasting. Some years ago, in a different capacity, I was approached by a commercial television company with the offer to become their director of news. I had 3 meetings with the company, and at a very fine dinner in London, the final part of the discussion, I had a difficulty getting my head around their concept of news. And the acting chief executive turned to me and said, I'd explain it with an example. And he kept calling me Mikey. That little thing about that. Anyway, Mikey, he said, if there is a new shopping mall opening tomorrow, and I stick my head around the door to your office and I say, Mikey, there's a new shopping mall opening, what's your answer going to be? I said, it depends, what's the news value of the shopping mall? Mikey, he said, you give me the wrong answer. The answer is, what's its advertising worth? I happily rest my case.
Okay, we're getting to the end now. I'll just say I have been at this public broadcasting station just before the election, the presidential elections. They were not very concerned about not getting that money that they're getting because it's so little, and what they're concerned about is the crisis because that means something for their possibilities to get sponsors. But never mind. Listen, I promised to be provocative. I hope I have been enough provocative. I love public service stations. I grew up with it. I've been in this business for 43 years, and I'm running a public service station, and I think it should live, just to make it clear to you. Okay, thank you very much.